going to Yasmine El Amine. She's currently pursuing her PhD at the University of College in London, and she's a researcher with us at ARI, working on Tunisia. And so here, maybe Yasmina, how is this transition in the context of Tunisia? Maybe, and you can provide examples from your fieldwork. How are local communities responding to these mega projects? We've talked in the previous panel about green hydrogen. So please, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. So like Zain said, in this talk, I'm really going to try to briefly talk about the transition that's happening in Tunisia, some of the challenges, who's being left behind, and I'm going to maybe go a bit deeper on what just transition really means in countries in the Global South, since we've heard from our first speaker about really a more global North perspective. And I'm really bad with time, so please tell me when my 5 minutes are up. So I think in the first session, Daria and Mohammed really laid the scene for what's happening in the energy transition in Tunisia. So I'm not going to delve on that, but I just wanted to say maybe one point about how it's viewed from a sort of justice perspective when it comes to maybe the political scene, which has, somehow unlocked the transition. So now we're seeing that there are projects that are coming through, but it's actually, when you look at it from an energy democracy perspective, I think it's kind of worrying. So I think what we might see right now is like really a top-down approach to the energy transition in Tunisia, with very little local participation and even very little national ownership. Because I think right now, by the way, a lot of what I'm saying right now has come from the fieldwork that I've done, and it's with talking with a lot of CSOs that are really on the ground. So this is not like, this is what I've heard from them. So I'm sort of, bringing this message. So it's really concerning the trajectory of the transition, specifically about this very focused export perspective. I know that in the first session, there was a different perspective about it, but I'm bringing sort of a new perspective about this. As we all know, Tunisia depends a lot on imports, whether in energy or in food. So I think that what's happening right now, this really focus on renewables, green hydrogen, with a largely export dimension, raises serious questions about really who benefits from this transition, who bears the cost, and so these were just many points to start with. Also, I wanted to comment on the fact that a lot of these projects are meant to be happening in the South. I think we all know, I think it was mentioned also in the first panel, that the South is really one of the most underdeveloped regions of Tunisia, with a lot of social marginalization. Tunisia also, I think this was already mentioned, but the water scarcity issue is really big on, CSOs are really worried about this water scarcity issue. And for it to be met with desalinization does not seem like the ideal path right now, because it creates a lot of competition with existing water needs. It creates competition with food needs, with agriculture. So I think CSOs are really talking about this need to have this water, energy, food nexus approach when it comes to any energy project. And then a lot of my work has been to ask CSOs what does just transition mean to them. So I think there's a lot of definitions for just transition, and there's different perspectives. And as we've all said, like there's different actors, but just transition in the Global South has often been framed from a climate justice perspective. And there's this very strong perspective that talks about historical imbalances and historical responsibilities between Global North and Global South. I think maybe Ahmed spoke a bit about this, but on a micro scale, but I think even on a macro scale, talking about just transition is a lot of systemic change. It's about moving away from extractivism towards more equitable models of production and consumption. And I think there's a lot to think about, even when we're talking about CBAM from a justice perspective. How much responsibility can countries from the Global South bear when it comes to decarbonization, when they were not given the right to develop and to emit? I think this question of common but differentiated responsibilities is really what CSOs are thinking about right now in Tunisia. And I'm sorry, I don't know how I'm doing on time, but I wanted to say that for them, they've been talking a lot about energy sovereignty. They've been talking about energy democracy. They've been talking about more decentralized projects where there's actually a decent job creation and real job creation. I mean, everything related to green hydrogen, there's a lot of concern about what kind of jobs are going to be created, what technology will be transferred, how will they be able to access this technology. I mean, I know you've talked about nearshoring and friendshoring, but when it comes to hydrogen, which is quite complex, will there be actual transfer of technology? I think these were some of the concerns that they've been raising. And with the political situation right now in Tunisia, you all know how difficult it is to have these spaces for dialogue. I think what they've said to me is that there are some sort of dialogues that are happening, but that not all CSOs are being included, that there's a bit of cherry picking that's happening. Anyone that is opposed to certain technologies is not always being included. And one last thing, maybe just to highlight that some of the CSOs are actually doing interesting work of going and speaking to communities directly, of getting their interests, of finding what their perceptions are about these mega projects, even about green hydrogen, and sort of building this scene or building this ground for having actual imaginaries about what would it mean to have this transition, what direction do they want. And I think there's a lot to learn from that. And I think this is one main thing that is happening, that is missing, that this talk about what do people actually want, and I think also Mohammed mentioned this in the first session, not just what the government of Tunisia want, but what do the people want? Because at the end, this land issue is very critical. South of Tunisia has been marginalized right now. What it seems like is that lands might be taken from them and they don't know what is really coming back to them. So I think there's a need to question these models that are being proposed right now. And I'm done. Thank you.